One of our questions received on Instagram was tips for low budget students in terms of health and nutrition. Pick a cheap supermarket first and foremost. So your Lidl's and Aldi's are perfect for students. In terms of protein sources, I'd certainly recommend looking at like chicken thighs and chicken drumsticks rather than going for your breast. Lean beef mince is also cheaper than say steak, and look at kind of tinned fish varieties. So look at your mackerels, look at your tunas, and also look at dairy. So Greek yogurt, cottage cheese are really good cheap alternatives for protein, so you can hit your protein intake per day on a lower budget rather than going for the higher price stuff. In terms of carbohydrates, a lot of whole wheat products are quite cheap. Whole wheat bread, whole wheat tortilla wraps, pita breads, I think some of them are like 55p. Some oats, some Weetabix in the morning, same again, relatively cheap. Getting some good whole grain products in there for higher fibre intake. And then look at some packet rices, easy to do for when you're student to shove in the microwave. Same again, trying to go for the higher fibre versions. And also just getting some kind of whole wheat pasta. In terms of fat sources, looking at kind of some eggs, some avocados are relatively cheap. In terms of fruit and vegetables, getting some frozen fruit and vegetables will probably be better for you when you're student for a couple of reasons. One, they are generally cheaper. Two, they're going to last longer. So rather than waste 2 or 3 days when they do kind of start to go mouldy, in terms of the frozen varieties, it's going to be more ideal for you with the less risk of them going off and you're losing money that way. Also getting some whole fruits, so such as your apples, bananas and pears, etc. are much more cheaper than getting kind of your berry types. So I'd certainly say keep to them. In terms of vegetables, similar to your frozen fruit, so getting your frozen vegetables is an easier way to make sure that they are fresher for longer in terms of keeping them in the freezer so they're not going mouldy in your fridge. Still aim to get at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables per day. Fresh fruit and veg is usually the higher price, so that's where we'd certainly say probably going frozen type. One of the questions for our Ask Box in Science was what's better? Is it 2 or 3 bigger meals or 4 to 5 smaller meals? First and foremost, the most important part is your total daily caloric intake, so energy intake, as well as total carbohydrate and protein intake. Make sure whether we are gaining weight, we're maintaining weight or we're losing weight in terms of what your aim is. In terms of performance, what we recommend is probably 4 or 5 smaller meals. So what we would say is breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then having 2 snacks. So a snack around your workout and then post-workout. This is so we can get frequent feedings of protein in these meals, so all these meals to contain protein, that we are able to recover, especially when we're training, say multiple times per day. Will help is aid satiety. So we're probably going to be less hungry because we are having more frequent feedings of protein throughout the day. I like to make sure that a lot of our athletes, especially at breakfast, lunch and dinner, they always contain carbohydrates. Now this will be lesser on say lighter and rest days compared to your higher training days, but even on those days we still like to have some carbohydrates on that plate to make sure that there's fibre in there to help us feel full. What many people do is they'll cut carbohydrates on these main meals, but then later in the day they get more peckish, and this is where they are more likely to probably cheat on the diet and go for some say refined products and junk food to make sure they're getting that sugar rush, because they're feeling quite fatigued from having those low carbohydrates. What foods can I have on a fight day if I'm fighting in the evening if I'm an amateur boxer? So this is where we would certainly say when you're waking up on the day of an amateur fight, you probably want to be on weight or slightly below it. So then we can have some food leading into the weigh-in. Now what we would say is we're probably wanting lighter options but also higher in energy. So by this we mean is kind of low fibre, which don't take much room up in our stomach, which pack a lot of energy. Maybe a bowl of Rice Krispies with a drizzle of honey on top, some full fat Greek yogurt with a tablespoon of honey or jam. Could even be a slice of white toast with a tablespoon of peanut butter, a drizzle of jam. What you're getting here is quite a small amount of food, which isn't going to weigh heavy on you for the weigh-in, but it's going to give you a lot of energy. Even if we can get a better meal in there, it could be where we have say maybe a bowl of white rice with a bit of sweet chili or soy sauce. So from a main meal we're getting some energy there, which we're going to use later on in the fight, but it's not going to be really big and bulky to weigh us down. In terms of hydration around that, I'd usually say drink to thirst. On the day we can probably slightly drink a bit less to make sure we're weighing a bit lighter, then replace that straight after the weigh-in with some electrolytes. So we would say smaller frequent feedings on the day of a weigh-in, lighter options which have still got carbohydrates in there, which isn't going to make take much room up in our stomach. A question received on our Instagram: when increasing the weight of an athlete, where is the calories best to come from? Is it carbohydrates or fat? What I would say is best to come from everywhere. So we need to be on a positive energy balance, so we need to increase calorie intake. We also need to increase protein intake, so we're on a positive nitrogen balance to build new tissue. So the recommended daily amounts to increase muscle is around 2.5 grams per kilogram of protein. In terms of carbohydrates, we probably want to look at around getting 3 to 5 grams per kilogram of carbohydrates into our bodies every day. Carbohydrates improve training quality, so therefore we should be able to get stronger and lift heavier weight to make sure we can increase functional mass, which is really important, so higher amounts of lean body mass. In terms of fat intake, the recommended daily amounts of fat intake for health is around 1 gram per kilogram. However, I like to go a bit higher on this, so probably around 1.2 to 1.3 grams per kilogram. The reason for this is fat intake doesn't take much amount of food to get into our bodies. So as we are trying to increase mass, especially over time, our appetite decreases. So our body's very clever because it's thinking, I've got so much energy here, I don't really want any more. So this way, for example, if we had 200 gram of full fat Greek yogurt compared to 200 gram of 0% Greek yogurt, we're going to get 150 to 200 more calories for the same serving of food. So it's a lot easier to do when we are increasing mass. Same again, if we want to add maybe a couple of tablespoons of olive oil or maybe half an avocado to our main meals, we're getting some really good essential fatty acids in there, which doesn't take much room upon our plate compared to, say, if we wanted to increase our carbohydrate content by, say, another 100 to 200 grams. That's going to take a lot of volume up on our plate, probably going to be quite overdaunting in terms to eat that on a regular basis. Also, there's a lot of good studies by Bridge et al, which has a look at kind of full fat Greek yogurt. I think there's one on whole milk. Basically, they're looking at whole milk compared to skim milk and actually increase muscle protein synthesis even greater. There's also some studies on whole eggs compared to egg whites, and the whole eggs increase muscle protein synthesis and lean body mass much higher. So this is why I tend to prefer to go more towards higher fat, full fat products when we are looking to increase muscle mass. Question we received on our Ask Box in Science was: I've recently added red meat and oily fish into my diet after not having it for many months, and I feel much better benefit for performance. Is this placebo? I'd say it's possibly not. In terms of red meat, oily fish such as salmon is quite high in heme iron. 20% of athletes are actually iron deficient, because it's really hard to reach iron intake levels when we lose a lot of iron through sweat when we're training. So having these lean red meat sources and those oily fish, we're going to increase that heme iron into our blood, which is going to increase hemoglobin and red blood cells, which is probably going to improve our aerobic performance. A good idea to increase red meat and oily fish to around 3 times per week to help decrease the risk of fatigue for aerobic training sessions. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to send us any more questions on Boxing Science _nutrition through a direct message, then feel free to, and either I will respond on Instagram or we will set up another YouTube question and answer, and we will do it on here for you. Thank you very much.